grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. "Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that has been lost.' Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents and over 99 righteous people who need no repentance. Or what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she's found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I lost.' Just so I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
And that is what makes Jeremiah stand the test of time. Not because it speaks to one time only when it was written, but continues to call us to engagement. Now, I want to be clear about something. There's a line in here that says, not know me, they are stupid children. People that God's calling, quote, stupid children aren't actually children. They're the adults in power. That's what he's referring to. And yet, at the beginning of it, my poor people, God is in a place of lament. I don't think for a second God is inflicted, only commenting on the reality that Jeremiah is experiencing. The words of Jeremiah, I looked on the earth, it was a waste and void. I looked at the mountains, they were quaking. I looked, there was no one at all, the birds had all fled. It speaks in our own time. As does the psalm that was chosen intentionally to be paired with Jeremiah. An insider from Israel is lamenting at the state of his people. It's not someone looking and wagging a finger at some people over there. They are expressing what they themselves are experiencing. Speaks to our own time. And I want to get to a better place. And thankfully the gospel is here to bring us to a better place. We have Jesus once again eating with people, just like a couple of weeks ago. But the situation is different. 2 weeks ago, we heard of Jesus at a dinner party of a religious leader, where they get all upset with Jesus when he, right in front of them, heals someone on the Sabbath. And Jesus says, wait, anybody do this? It's necessary. They weren't happy with him. So Jesus starts to reflect some of that, not happy with that, mocking them over the way that they are jockeying at the table in order to get recognized. Remember that passage? Again, Jesus is eating with people, but it's not clear that it's a dinner party. In fact, it doesn't seem like it is a dinner party. Rather, it is eating among people who have come seeking Jesus and his teaching and his preaching. We were told that all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to him, and the religious leaders were grumbling and saying, this fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them. Because you don't do that. If people are in the wrong, those type of people, you should associate with them. And I want to be clear as to what people we're talking about. There's one group that is mentioned specifically, and then there's the general group, sinners. First I want to talk about tax collectors. Please do not hear this as reason to despise people who work for the IRS. Or any person who works for a government in a system that has taxes. Something different existed in the first century. They called it taxes. And what it was that someone among their own people went around collecting on behalf of the state, i.e. the Romans. And so this person, who was certainly Jewish, goes to his Jewish neighbors and gets and takes money from them. How much money? Well, the amount of money that was prescribed by the Romans, plus whatever else they could get, because that's how he got paid. That's how he became wealthy. Because the tax collectors in this time were wealthy. They were a position that probably best to our mind comes from the Robin Hood version of the Sheriff of Nottingham, who collected the taxes from people who could for it and got every last cent from them. They were collaborators. They extorted their own people. That's the tax collector. Now what about sinners? Who's that? Well, it doesn't say specifically, but we can make a good educated guess here. Sinners were anyone who publicly defied the custom or the Torah. They were caught in something. Or, to be blunt, their life had gone to hell. Because that was a sure sign that God was unpleased with them, because that was the mindset back then. If someone had blessings, they were blessed by God. Obviously, they were living a great life, right? But if you believe that that's how God blesses people, you have to take the other side of that coin, which is God inflicting curses. So if they saw someone whose life was in shambles, clearly they were the sinners. There's a whole book of Job on this. And the shock of shock is this up-and-coming, somewhat respected, certainly gaining power rabbi named Jesus. Welcomed them and ate with them. And they were charged and guilty for it. So Jesus tells a couple stories. 3 stories to be exact. And the way this probably really happened was not that everybody was silent and quiet until not only he finished, but then told the moral of the story. There's probably some heckling, some interaction, or some protest to his story, because the stories that are told don't actually follow conventional wisdom. You know, we can get lulled into a sense like, well, of course everybody would do this, because he says, which one of you does not? But that's rhetoric speaking. Because let me tell you clearly, no shepherd, no owner of a flock would leave 99 unprotected sheep, a commodity, to go off searching for some lost one. That's called acceptable loss. No one would do it. It would be foolish to do so. And Jesus tells the story, and I'm sure that they reacted to him. What are you talking about? No one in the right mind does it. But God does that with individuals who are lost and then rejoices so greatly with them. You see the punchline that comes through there. It gets watered down because it's all here for us in one single hearing. And it's like, oh, of course you listen to Jesus. That was a radical statement. But knowing it was one singular radical story, we get another story. The woman, having 10 silver coins, loses one. And who does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? Well, now this one's a little different, because most people would do that. Now, maybe if they were, had so much money that that silver coin didn't mean anything. But for most people, if they have 10 and they lose one, that is something that they need. But what they wouldn't do after finding it is go tell their neighbors about their silly endeavor and then throw a party over it that I guarantee you cost more than that single silver coin. What? No one would do that. And Jesus' point in the story is that that is how much God searches and loves and hopes and celebrates so extravagantly beyond any reasonable person. Now, somewhere in the midst of all this, I guarantee you, there was one person who raised the real objection. Jesus, these tax collectors and sinners, they don't deserve it. They have done something that makes them deserve where they're at. You should be associating that for that precise reason. That's different than a lost sheep or a lost toy. And so Jesus tells the third story of this chapter. Who knows what it is? Take a guess. Someone shout it out. It's the prodigal son who takes his inheritance, leaves his father and brother behind, goes off and is a complete spendthrift, finds himself in a foreign land in the midst of a famine, reduced to a job that no person would take. And in that midst of squalor, and in that midst of despair, and that midst of self-loathing, the text says that he remembers himself. He remembers his father. He remembers his home. And he knows he has to go back with the tail between his legs. And starts rehearsing a bit that at very least will give him some mercy. Because no one else is giving him any. And you know how the story ends, right? The father has been waiting, hoping, imagining the day where maybe there will be some future for this family. And sees him and rushes out to him. And is so thrilled, he doesn't even let him get into his little spiel. And says, we've got to celebrate because what was lost was found. Prodigal son, forgiving father. Those are the two great ways to refer to the story. But there is, of course, a third character, the elder son. The elder son who is respected. The elder son who has what he needs. The elder son who already should feel included, should feel secure, but is grumbling. Grumbling over the grace that his father shows his brother. Not unlike the religious leaders who are grumbling over Jesus, who is welcoming and leading sinners. But here is the beautiful, powerful twist, my siblings. The elder son is not condemned, but is pleaded with. Pleaded to come into the party. What Jesus is saying to the religious leaders, to anyone who is in a place of comfort and acceptance, to be about joy and new life for others. Because any person can imagine and has been or may be currently in any of those three positions. Jesus chooses to embody joy and hope of new life. That's what he's doing with the tax collectors and sinners, and he asks those grumbling to do likewise, to be transformed, to see one another beyond any sense of deserving as beloved